right, and welcome to the second Halloween special for the Dissecting Fiction podcast.
Halloween spooky Gonzanza. Spooktacular.
Spookstravaganza. So if you listen to our first episode, which was on zombies, you will know that our concept for this is to pick different subgenres in the horror genre and pick our favorite movies and talk about them a little bit and explain why and why they're important and all sorts of fun stuff.
I guess I'll go again and say what my favorite slasher is, and this is probably a little controversial. I'm going to say It Follows, which is a pretty recent film into the canon of slashers. There's a weird thing where slashers where it crosses over with monster films quite a lot, and like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of is like a slasher and a monster film. It Follows writes that border very strongly, in which is both like a psychological slasher and like there's not really like a monster, and like you can always see the killer, and that's what I always find like fascinating about It Follows.
Yeah, that is a cool way to look at it as a slasher. As you were saying, like slashers tend to be grounded by like the icon, like whoever that may be, whether it's Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers or the Leprechaun himself. I love It Follows. It also very much captures the sort of film style of the slasher era in like the early 80s.
It also like usually with slasher films, usually they kind of like stave off, at least in the early parts of any franchise, it staves off the killer until like maybe halfway through. But here you meet the killer basically instantaneously.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot because the killer isn't...
It's everybody.
Yeah, it isn't a guy. It is, it's not something you can really define too easily, which allows for that mystery that you delay the viewing the killer to remain even though you're quote unquote seeing the killer.
I like it because like even you know exactly who the killer is, so you spend the whole time looking for the killer and like all these background characters. You're trying to look for like anybody that kind of sticks out. All it does is really is walk.
Right.
But like that was what makes it so scary, and that's what it made like a lot of these other like slasher villains, I guess. I was about to say heroes. So iconic that they just kind of chase people all the time.
Right. There's a certain psychology to that too. Is you're always looking to get to someplace safe and stop.
Right.
Would be the idea, or just stop in general. And like I think that's a cool little like psychological aspect of slashers. Is one of the things that's pretty consistent is this idea that they can't be stopped. They just kind of keep moving. Even if they're not moving fast, they're just constantly focused on who they're trying to kill.
Like you can fly 3,000 miles, however far, it will just walk those 3,000 miles and eventually find you.
Yeah, if you stop running, you're dead.
Yeah, but you can stop running for quite a while, and maybe you'll just forget. I just find it really interesting that it's just like this killer that is always hunting after you, but it's not like malicious in any way. It just is. It feels much more like a force of nature. Which
is sort of a comment on slashers themselves.
Yeah.
This is...
Mike Myers is always compared to that.
But I think that's the interesting comment that like It Follows is making is, well after the advent of slashers and through their popularity rising and falling, It Follows very much looks back on those movies and kind of goes like, okay, what's actually scary about this?
And that's why I really like it. And then it has a little bit of social commentary. Nothing too biting, but just enough to kind of like sink your teeth in about like sex and, STDs and things like that.
Right. And it's almost this thematic heightening of the idea of in a slasher film, you can't have sex because then you're dead.
Yeah, I mean, Friday the 13th always does that ever since the first one. That's why I really like It Follows. It kind of encapsulates the genre for me. But it does so in a really interesting way in that a lot of the early slasher films, not that they're hard to watch or anything, but like you can see their age a bit. And this one's, I guess, shinier to me.
Especially the weaker slasher films. And I don't mean like bad films. I mean just ones that aren't really inventive. Yeah. If you start watching slasher films in a row, it can get pretty tedious.
Like watching Friday the 13th, you can't see anything for like half that film.
Oh boy. I actually tried to watch all of the Friday the 13th in a row in like a week or so, and I made it to like part 5, and I was like, I need a break. And like it's not even like I dislike the films. It's just sort of the whole joke about them being the same movie over and over again. It's not totally true, but
it applies more to slashers than I guess anything else.
I would agree because you're pretty limited in what they can do, which is kind of where my pick comes in. As you were saying, there's a lot of crossover between genres, and slashers do kind of veer into monster territory. If I was disregarding that, 100% A Nightmare on Elm Street would have been my pick.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree with that if we're going like pure slasher.
But that's where I kind of disagree. Because I don't see A Nightmare on Elm Street as a slasher. I see it as a monster movie. Because Freddy Krueger is so distanced from reality. And his means of killing, even though there is so much focus on the kills, which becomes a big part of slashers as they develop, I never saw him as someone like competing with Michael Myers or Jason.
Really? I always saw them in like the same wheelhouse.
I just don't. I see it as it's more of like almost an occult type thing to me. Like it's about magic and this weird dude who shows up in your dreams and kills you. Mm. And I see the connections and I see where the argument is made for it to be a slasher. But it's just not a slasher to me. And that's in large part what I based my pick off of is, all right, how do I define a slasher? And to me, it's kind of the least amount of like Gaga, the least amount of...
Lady Gaga?
Not Lady Gaga. The thing that Lady Gaga, well, she named herself after Radio Gaga, but it's the whole thing. But getting away from the monsteriness of some slashers, like I wanted a pure threat that doesn't stop and is a really good movie, and to me, that's Halloween. Because
that's kind of the one that started it all too.
And that's a funny part too. Is like I was doing, it's been an interest of mine to kind of dig into what a lot of people would consider like really crappy movies. I really disagree with that. I agree that Halloween probably the most influential as far as like the type of kills, the way kills are portrayed in the films, the way the killers are portrayed in the films, even like the way it's shot in a lot of ways becomes like super influential, like with all that slasher genre that follows. It's not the first slasher. You can't say that. You have Black Christmas before it, which, there's been an argument that Halloween is essentially an unofficial sequel because Carpenter was so influenced by Bob Clark's Black Christmas. He even had discussions with Bob Clark about making a sequel to Black Christmas that took place on a different holiday, being Halloween. So the tie is very much there. You have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre before it. And then you have the 60s ones that kind of walk the line that are almost slashers, but...
Like I Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah, but even when you get into start of that like exploitation territory, there's enough where you can't really say Halloween is the first slasher. But I think it's super pure. It is killer escapes, killer goes back to town, killer kills teenage girls, he ends up not killing the one that survives. And like and it makes the movie not sound that great, but it is great. And we all know that because everything in there is so well done that you forget how simple it is.
No, I think simplicity is kind of the genius. There's nothing wrong with simplicity in like any films. Like now there's an aspect where like a lot of films are really complicated. And this is somewhat of a parallel too with that, and it follows like the method of the killer is just really simple. Like he just kind of finds you.
Right. And it's not much different with Michael Myers.
Yeah. He's
just there to kill people. And then at the end, the only thing that comes off even like supernatural at all is the fact that he should be dead after, his fall out of the window.
But he ain't.
But he's gone. But that's it. That's all you get. And you can watch, Halloween 2, the original one, and find out more about the night he came home. But if you leave it at that, that's just enough weirdness, just enough monsterness for me.
Yeah, it's the inexplicable that makes him like really interesting. Like he doesn't really say anything. He's just there.
And after that, you're forced to explain. If you're going to make a sequel, you have to explain. And that's where I feel like a lot of slashers start to lose it. Friday the 13th, in a weird way, embraces it and makes it work probably better than anyone else does.
Oh, yeah, they have a giant zombie man just with a machete walking around.
Right, but he doesn't start out as that. It evolves into this thing. And that works to an extent, but then, it starts to lose traction as it goes.
Yeah.
That's why I went with Halloween, is because it's so pure and you don't lose that traction. And it's still a slasher, and it's still that same kind of threat of like, how the hell do you stop this guy? Every time I go into a closet, he finds me.
Well, it's not even how you stop this guy. It's like, how do you get away from this guy? Because it's very like, it's just people just trying to find a way to survive. And I think that's kind of like what makes it really interesting.
Slashers are based on the pursuit. And they're boring until that pursuit starts, typically. But that's why the pursuit usually starts pretty quick. Like Friday the 13th, people are dying pretty quick. But I think That's our little commentary on slashers for this year.
Follow us on all your favorite social medias at Dissecting Fiction. When you watch this on YouTube or you listen to this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment what your favorite slasher film is, and subscribe because we will be having more content. This is going to be a pretty big content-heavy month for us.
Yep.
So make sure to subscribe, hit the bell button, and you'll get notifications whenever we upload something new.
You can even disagree with us in the comments. We don't care.
Yeah, no.
Go ahead, tear into us. That controversy creates cash, right?
Yeah, it creates clicks. Clicks are more important.
Oh, that's right, clicks now. Yeah.
Clicks are more important than cash now.
Is that true?